If you like my content, please consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is below. Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Tavern. I'm your innkeeper, Vase Odin, and today we're going to be doing level 3 spells for the Artificer Battlesmith. At 9th level, you get 2 level 3 spell slots. Let's go over each spell and what I think their benefits would be for an Artificer Battlesmith. So Aura of Vitality, this one's a great choice for a healer build. You can use your bonus action to heal at range every single round. It's an awesome spell to have always prepared, and as a Battlesmith, I think for me it always will be. Conjure Barrage. You can use non-magical ammo to throw a non-magical weapon when you cast this spell, and cause creatures in a 60-foot cone to make a dexterity saving throw. If they fail, they take 3d8 damage. If they succeed, they take half. This one's a weird choice of a spell. I get what they were going for, but the Artificer is a bit of a bad fit, I think, for this spell. If you're already using a crossbow infused with your repeating shot infusion, it can't be used with this spell. If you use a thrown weapon that's infused with your returning weapon infusion, you can't use it with this spell. If you have a melee weapon with an infusion, you can't use it with this spell. So you either have to carry non-magical ammo or extra non-magic weapons just so you can use them to cast this spell. So you'll have to store your regular weapon, take out the non-magical one, then cast a spell. I don't know, it just doesn't seem to fit very well with the class. And then on top of all that, you're only doing 3d8 damage. And they get a dexterity saving throw on, to top all that off. For a level 3 spell, this seems pretty bad. And just in general, not even for Battlesmith. You always have it prepared as a Battlesmith, yay, but I don't think I would ever be casting that spell. Blink, this one is a mediocre defensive spell. There's a 50-50 chance that every round you're going to pop out of existence into the ethereal plane. And basically, that makes you immune to most attacks until your next turn, and at the beginning of your turn, you appear again within 10 feet. It sure sounds pretty awesome. I like the feel and the flavor of it. I like the idea of having this magical battling guy just poof, disappear and then appear next to you on the other side. Boom, hits you again, disappears. But it doesn't happen every round. It's only a 50-50 chance every round. So there's times where you can benefit from it if it pops. But there's going to be combats where you cast this spell and it just doesn't do anything for you because you don't roll the right number in order to pop out into the ethereal plane. In a sorcerer character, I'd probably rate this spell a little bit higher, but since you're a Battlesmith, I'd probably skip this one. I like that it's not concentration, so there's that, but it does take an action to cast, so there's that. Overall, I think it's a bad choice. I wouldn't prepare it. Catnap. Basic premise of the spell is that up to 3 creatures can get the benefits of a short rest in 10 minutes instead of an hour. I would say in certain parties this can be decent, but overall I think this is just way too situational. Skip it and use Rope Trick instead. Create food and water. This basically lets you create food and water. Very campaign specific. If you play a campaign where resources are scarce, then take this in a heartbeat. Otherwise, I think it wouldn't hurt you if you skip this one. Now, if you're built for support, maybe take it. Dispel Magic. This one's a great debuff spell. This one can literally turn the tides of a combat. So I definitely take this when building for support. I'd also take it when building for utility. Definite yes for this one. If you're mostly combat oriented, maybe not, but there's never going to be a time where you're going to say, I wish I hadn't taken Dispel Magic. Trust me, it's almost always going to be useful. Elemental Weapon. When you're a full caster at level 5 and adventuring with a party of fighters, this spell can change the outcome of some combats, especially if those fighters don't have magic weapons. Level 5 characters generally start seeing monsters that resist non-magical damage at that level, and full casters can get this spell to help someone out. But at this point, you're level 9. At this level, changing a weapon to a +1 and dealing an extra 1d4 damage is honestly pretty laughable. Plus, it takes your concentration. Plus, you're an artificer, so if your group doesn't have magic weapons already, you're just doing it wrong. Just say no to this spell. Flame arrows, exactly like elemental weapon, but worse, because you only get 12 uses and then the spell ends. Don't take this one. Fly. Okay, here's a good spell. The ability to fly is so useful both in and out of combat. This is a spell worth using your concentration for, definitely. Glyph of Warding, you store a spell on an item or surface, and when conditions are met, the spell goes off. You can also just make it explode if someone moves it. It's pretty situational, but there's times where I can see it being useful. There's some really cool shenanigans that you can do with this spell, though, if your DM is not careful and doesn't understand what you're trying to do. For example, it can literally help you get off a concentration spell without having to keep concentration. Before a long rest, if you have the slots available, you cast a spell and then put them on the glyphs or wherever you're resting. When you finish the rest, set off the glyph, and then something like invisibility will be cast on you and you don't have to concentrate. This is a good use, like if you're about to sneak into some place and you camp right outside, do the Glyph of Warding, take a rest. When you wake up, set off the glyph, and now you're invisible when you wake up. Run into the camp invisible and infiltrate, no problem, and you'll still have your concentration if you want to do something else with that. Very, very, very situational. I understand that. But there are things that you can do to break the game with this spell. So I would just talk with your DM if you want to be nice and make sure that they understand what the capabilities are of something like this. Haste. Another concentration spell that is well worth it. Granting yourself or an ally an extra attack each round is good enough already. But an additional +2 to your armor class, double movement, and advantage on dexterity saving throws, it's icing on the cake. So that's a definite yes for me. Protection from energy. Resistance to an energy type is kind of situational unless you specifically know what you're going up against. The fact that this requires concentration is a complete deal breaker for me. If it's for yourself, use absorb elements instead, since it doesn't require concentration and it only uses a first level spell slot. If it's for someone else, I think you're better off just healing them after they take elemental damage. I'd probably skip this one on most days. Again, it's if this spell said the first time you take damage of a specific energy type listed, you get resistance to that energy type for the specified period, this spell would be a lot better. But because you have to choose when you cast the spell, you have to know what you're going up against. And that just makes it almost pointless, because unless you somehow know, like you cast divination or you can foretell the future or you know where you're going, you're probably not going to know what type of energy you're going to be facing against. So yeah, skip it. Revivify. Both as a player and a dungeon master, I'm not a huge fan of making it so easy to come back from death. So spells like this are generally ones that I wouldn't take for myself. But I understand it if you do, and if you do like them. It's a great lifesaver for this, specifically like the brutal campaigns where death is always around the corner. So yes, very useful for those of you who like to use this kind of thing. Tiny Servant. This spell is basically a way to get a limited familiar that can perform tasks for you. There are countless uses for a familiar such as this. It can't deliver touch spells for you, but because it has arms and legs, it can manipulate objects like opening doors, setting off traps, feeding potions to allies. It also can use magically infused items that you create. This is probably one of the best uses for this spell. It's expensive as a level 3 spell, and the servant only lasts 8 hours instead of like a familiar that's permanent until it dies. But I can see times when I would use this, especially as getting a free action to use your infused items. So this one is probably a yes for me, to be honest. And finally, water breathing. It allows up to 10 creatures to breathe underwater for 24 hours. It's a ritual, so it doesn't have to take up a slot. That's good. I wouldn't necessarily have it prepared, but it wouldn't hurt to have it prepared. If your preparation slots are limited, though, I'd probably save it for a time where you know you're going into an underwater or a place where the drowning is a possibility. Now, It doesn't say that you can use it on yourself, though. So here's something that I would probably ask your Dungeon Master. This spell says other creatures, so, or a creature you can see. To me, even if you can see your arms and legs, that doesn't mean you can see yourself. I feel like the face is seeing yourself. That's how I would rule out on this one. But maybe there's shenanigans that your DM will allow, like if you have a mirror, you know, now you can see yourself, right? Technically, you are now a creature that you can see. So, I'm not sure if there's an official ruling on this one. I would look into it. It's not a big deal, to be honest, because the chances are you're never going to cast this spell or ever use it. So, you know, whatever. All right, so to recap the level 3 spells, I would definitely be preparing Dispel Magic, Fly, and Haste. Those 3 spells are staple level 3 spells for any caster, and it wouldn't hurt for you to have any of those 3. Now, as far as Nose, Conjure Barrage, Catnap, and Elemental Weapon. Absolutely not on those. And that does it for the level 3 spell guide for the Artificer Battlesmith. I hope that you found this video helpful, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them. I'm your innkeeper, Vase Odin from the Twisted Tentacle Tavern. I'll talk to you guys soon.